Hello everyone and welcome to this oil painting time-lapse of this painting entitled The Cat's Perspective. I really hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new, and let's begin the video. The idea behind this oil painting, as in a frame within a frame and a cat peeking through, is something that I've had for such a long time, several months in fact, and I finally got around to transitioning it onto an actual painting. And the reason I decided to paint this subject was because whenever I paint anything, a painting, or whenever I create a drawing, I'm always trying to think about perspective and lighting. For me, those two things are the most important out of all my paintings. I think that it differs for every artist. I think all artists think about different things when they're starting a painting. Some like to think of perhaps even the subject matter first, but for me, actually what comes first is whether I can create a painting that has an amazing perspective and the right light in the right place and the right shadows in the right place. And so those two elements come first for me, and actually strangely enough the subject matter tends to come sort of further down, and then I start to think about what could look good in this scene that I've thought up in my mind. And so because it's so important to me, the idea and the concept of perspective, I decided to create a painting around this theme. Now, whenever I walk through a gallery or I see a painting, or even if I see my own paintings, I'm always trying to be within the painting. So I like to feel myself in the scene. If I can successfully feel myself within that painting, like I could transport to that world, then I feel like the painting has been super successful. Also, if you can see the light dancing upon the images in a really beautiful way, where there's shadow, the right things are in shadow, and the things that your eyes want to catch, the subject matter that your eyes want to catch, are lit up beautifully, then that again to me is a successful use of lighting. So I thought to myself, what better way to create a painting than to actually make it about perspective, this super important part of creating art. And it's something that I think a lot of people think about and they learn about when they're doing art, when they're studying or when they're teaching themselves. I myself am self-taught, so for me, having to go to these particular themes when I'm starting a painting is very important. Otherwise I don't really have a structure. It's a structure that I've dreamed up myself. So I really wanted to create this kind of inner world within a painting. So the actual frame, obviously I painted myself, and then the cat coming out of the painting, so as if there is a figure or a creature within the painting and then wants to escape the painting. So there's kind of two levels of perspective. That was the subject all thought out, but I had some, as usual, little difficulties here and there in creating the painting. As you can see, it's a little small canvas, just a canvas panel, 10 by 8. So this is a really nice size. It's so small, but it's big enough to create a beautiful face of a cat or something close up. However, because I was creating a landscape behind the cat, I obviously needed to have tiny little brushes and the right paint. I decided to use Gamblin's oil colours because they are brilliant, so amazing for detail. If you love detailed work, you want to go for Gamblin oil colours. They create the finest detail. It's just such an amazing formula of paint. So that's what I decided to use, and the gold paint on the frame was where I hit my first kind of hurdle. It was kind of like the biggest issue that I had, really. I don't know if you are able to see here, because I was able to mix the gold with some darker brown from the, I believe it was burnt umber, from the Gamblin colours. You probably can't see how much difficulty I had, because with the Williamsburg gold paint, which is the only gold oil colour that I own at the moment, it's a pretty pricey one. I have to say that it is a beautiful oil paint, at least it was initially, but unfortunately I don't know how this happened. It started to leak in my container where I keep all my oil paints. I was super sad about it because I try to keep my oil paints really safe. They're all pretty expensive in terms of like oil paints, and in terms of oil paint grades rather, they're sort of the professional ones, so they tend to be the more expensive tubes. So I kind of like try to keep them really perfect, and you know, nobody go near my oil paints. And I've never had an issue with an oil paint leaking before. I mean, even when I've used cheap oil paints, I've never had that. And so I was really surprised, because this Williamsburg gold oil paint is supposed to be one of those, like, you know, super luxury brands. However, I do think though that I can't blame them too much, because sometimes when formulating metallic paint it can be very difficult to get the formula right. It's not like their other oil paint range. I'm sure they don't leak. It's just one of those things where they have a different formula for their gold and sort of metallic paints. So it did leak, and therefore the consistency of the oil paint I feel changed, and it does have these grains in, which is a very unique part of Williamsburg oil colours, and actually I really like the grain texture, but because some of the oil had leaked out I feel like it was a lot more difficult to work with. So I was kind of like trying to work it in and then trying to sort of make it look like a shiny gold frame, and there was a lot of detail that I wanted to put on the frame because I really wanted it to look like a frame you would see in a gallery, like a nice old master frame, you know. So it was a bit of a tricky one, and it did sort of slide all over the place. I don't know whether the oil was kind of leaking out even more, or whether that was just my own figment of my own imagination. I was just being a bit too worried about it. But anyway, it sort of turned out fine in the end. It's just it was quite difficult, and it took probably double the time to create the painting because of that. So I just thought I'd tell you about this little problem that I had. I feel like when painting, any painting, it's never really straightforward. And then I wasn't really too sure about how to paint the actual rest of the canvas, because initially I'd wanted to make it look like it was in a gallery, but then I thought it would be also nice to be in a home, you know, cats were peeking through this mysterious painting. So instead I went for this kind of like light pink colour that I mixed with Naphthol red and white. I believe it was called white, and yeah, it sort of turned out to be fine in the end. But it was a tricky thing in terms of colouring as well, because you don't know whether to use reds, and then you've got red in the mushrooms of course, and so it's all about kind of trying to find the right balance. But I am actually taking a different turn with my colours and my paintings in the future. I've sort of tried to tone down the amount of colours that I use in my paintings. I don't know whether you're aware, but normally in my paintings I use basically every colour I can think of. However, now I'm trying to be more strict with myself and making sure that I use just a few colours in the right places. Again, trying to think more about the light and the dark, and making sure that I get all the right reflections as well as shadows. So I really hope you enjoyed this painting. It was really a concept that has been in my mind for so long, and I'm just so glad that it finally was finished and then I started and completed it, and I really would love to know what you think of it. I hope you're well, and thank you again so much for your amazing comments on my last video. I will see you guys soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe, of course. I said it again, twice, as always, and take care. I'll see you soon, guys.